Hello everybody, we would like to warmly welcome you all to the third webinar of the TUrbOCliC webinar series 2017. As a cross-sectoral group, we are working on the topics of inclusive cities, urban governance and building resilience, as well as low-carbon development, capacity development methodologies, among others. So these webinar series aim to exchanging experiences and good practices among our members, as well as other interested colleagues or our partners. This webinar will be about sustainable urbanization and capacity development approaches. So we will have a deeper look into the Indian and Chinese experiences. China and India together account for almost 40% of the world's population. Due to their large population, both countries face similar challenges in regard to their development, such as rapid urbanization and lack of infrastructure. GIZ has been working in the environmental infrastructure and governance areas in India and in China for many decades. There are several examples of successful sectoral training programs, capacity development projects in different areas. Some to mention are the Municipal Solid Waste Management and Sanitation Planning in India or Energy Efficiency and Transport in China. More recently, the focus has been on smart cities, especially climate smart cities, and on managing the challenges of urbanization in general by pursuing a climate-friendly, integrated and sustainable urban development policy. In that sense, capacity development is very crucial, but offering it in such diverse and big countries like India and China is not without challenges. And now we will see the two presentations presented by two of our colleagues, India and China. So we will start now with India, and the first presentation will be by Ms. Vaishali Nandan. She's also my co-speaker of TUrbOCliC, and this will be on building capacities for improved urban sanitation services, a case of municipal solid waste management in India. So now I will briefly introduce all the speakers before coming to the presentation. So Vaishali Nandan is Deputy Director in the GIZ Support to National Urban Sanitation Policy at Delhi, India, and the joint speaker of TUrbOCliC. As part of the project, Ms. Nandan is responsible for municipal solid waste and is currently responsible for rolling out of these trainings, amongst other things. She has been working on the topic of municipal solid waste management for more than 15 years. She is a qualified urban and regional planner with a master's in geography. Followed will be another Indian case by Sarah Habersack. She will present experiences from training and hand-holding approach on city sanitation plans with medium-sized cities in India. Sarah is a social scientist and expert in organizational development and capacity development in the urban sector. She has a master in international development science as well as a master in organizational development and coaching. She has been working for GIZ in India for the last 4 years on urban sanitation and smart cities. She was technical advisor in the GIZ project Support to the National Urban Sanitation Policy and coordinated all activities on city sanitation planning and capacity development. Recently, she has become the project director for the technical cooperation project of GIZ India on integrated sustainable urban transport systems in smart cities. She has a long-standing expertise in capacity and institutional development of city managers and local governments. Followed will this be by our China colleagues. Mr. Peter Seiler, unfortunately he can't join us, but Marie Peters will take over to talk about building capacity partnerships in the Chinese-German cooperation. Marie Peters is project manager in GIZ's Sino-German Urbanization Partnership, where she is facilitating the cooperation with international institutions and industries and overseeing the outreach of the project with a focus on sustainable, integrative, and climate-friendly urbanization in China and Germany. Marie is an urban expert with nearly 10 years of experience working in East and South Asia and Europe. She's trained as an urban geographer at the University of Cologne with a focus on sustainable urbanization, climate risk resilience, and urban planning and development. She holds a PhD from the same institution where she worked in an international research project involving China and Bangladesh. Joining GIZ in 2015, she has worked in the field of international agendas towards sustainable urbanization by serving as an advisor to the German government in the Habitat 3 process. And the last presentation will be from my colleague in China, Ms. Chenzi Yiyang. She will talk about integrated capacity development approach for Kaili Cities Transport Hub project. Chenzi Yiyang is a project coordinator for Cities Development Initiative for Asia in China. Chenzi is an urban policy analyst with a focus on urban sustainability in China. She has managed research projects for the Natural Resources Defense Council China program, covering topics such as land use efficiency, urban growth boundary, urban walkability, green finance, etc. In Paris, where she lived before, she worked for the OECD on urban policy and green growth related projects related to China. So as you can see, it will be a very exciting presentation now with so many different views. So feel free to raise your questions in the chat or afterwards. And I will now hand over to Vaishali Nandan. Can you please take over as presenter?
Thank you, Eva. So, presenting the first case for India today, this comes from the sanitation project. The project is called Support to National Urban Sanitation Policy. The policy, of course, looks at municipal solid waste. Sanitation in India looks at not only wastewater issues but also municipal waste. Over the period of time, municipal solid waste in India has emerged as one of the most critical issues. Critical issues, of course, in terms of quantity, but also issues in management. And sometimes the management issues become a little more critical than the quantity issues. Just to give you a brief overview, so the project that we in India are dealing with deals directly with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Poverty Alleviation. And the implementation arm is through a mission called the Swachh Bharat Mission or the Clean India Mission. For us, I would say it was a very interesting turn of events in the sanitation project that the government of India started in 2014, a flagship program that actually pushes the subject of municipal solid waste and to some extent issues of wastewater. I say some extent because they have unfortunately divided the house of wastewater into public toilets and sewerage and septage between two missions. But in spite of that, there is enough focus on issues of sanitation covering both large subjects. The project that I'm part of works very closely in 5 states of the country, and varying from hilly to coastal to central to religious, and so there's a whole plethora, and together these states look at more than 500 urban local bodies, or maybe even more. So if you look at this in total, that's the platform we are looking at. Coming down to municipal solid waste, seeing the problems that were happening, the government of India initiated two two parallel activities. One was led by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and the other was led by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. The Ministry of Environment formulated a rules which was made in 2000. And similarly, the Urban Affairs Ministry formulated a technical guidance document to translate the rules so that it could help the cities, the universities, the urban local, the states, and everybody down on the ground actually to implement. However, down the line, over the 16 years of implementation, it was realized that there was some problem in the rule. And of course, if the rule was revised, then there had to be this technical handbook, which had to be devised. The technical handbook was prepared with the support of GIZ, and it, of course, had, not only a detailed translation, but also, what you call detailed cases and all that. But I will come to that later. It took GIZ as the project, as over two projects actually, about 3 years to prepare this through intensive debates in an expert committee, and with several revision of the rule which was happening parallel. So starting in 2013, we eventually prepared this technical document, which was translation of the rule called the manual in 2016. And it was finally launched once the rules were launched. It was not launched before that, which was good for us. This is just a detail of the expert committee, which had various ministries. Of course, the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs was in the lead, but various state departments, corporations, the Pollution Control Board, different NGOs, agencies on the ground, implementing agencies, and GIZ was hand-holding the entire process. The manual is also, it's a large document, so once the document was prepared, it was initially as a one bulky 1,000-page book, which was later split into 3, with a small overview for anybody like decision makers or elected representatives who could actually read the document fast, who just wanted to know what was inside it, with the part 2 as the main guiding document, and several rules, guidelines, etc. were put in part 3, and that is how it was split. But once this big document was prepared, there was this huge question of what really and how will we really take this forward. And that is where the main focus for today is, which is capacity building, because ultimately the idea was to ensure that every worker, down to every junior engineer, commissioner in all urban local bodies in the country was aware of not only what it meant, what the rules talked about, but how to implement to achieve them. So with the aim of looking at 4,041 cities and towns, that is the total number of recognized towns that India has. And I was just doing a backhand calculation just now. So it's almost, I think, 1,000 towns that we cover in the 5 states that we look at, but 1,000 is also not enough. So it's a large, if you really look at it, a large, number of towns even to be covered. And the number of states are also 31 states. And if you look at then the target groups, there are various target groups. So you have the decision makers like the senior officers, the councillors, the municipal commissioners, state departments, you have elected representatives, and then you have the administrative staff and the engineering staff. And everybody needs to understand to be able to really implement them on the ground. So we developed a training, and we developed a 4-day training, which could be shortened to just an introductory session for elected representatives to as much as 4 days, including site visits and everything, with 15 modules. We also developed not only the training, but also training of trainers and the additional material and whatever. And what you see on the side includes some of this material. We made sure that the sessions were interactive and practice-oriented, and had close links to real work. So there was also site visits planned in this. This entire thing was based on our case methodology for following the issue that there will be, what you take out of the room is probably, learned only through active learning. So short cases and then transfer element and guiding questions and group work and casework. We also prepared at the same time for live cases. So in case there were people who were looking at some live issues to be discussed, we presented these e-modules, as you call them, because they are now housed in the Clean India Mission website. They have their e-learning platforms. And these modules are basically used as active casework in case site visit is not possible, and even if site visit is possible, it looks at various issues that could be covered. Following all this material making, then we started the rollout countrywide. The first thing that we did was we looked at the accredited training institutes, and we did 4 regional trainings covering about 41 training institutes all over the country, north, west, southern, eastern, northeastern region. That's how the country is divided. And we had certain urban local bodies there to act as case bringers. So it was a 5-day training which actually ran. The training was run as a 3-day compressed module, and then with trainers. We've now started this ongoing this training with state institutes. So these institutes which were trained are now actually rolling this out either directly or through the state funds, and GIZ is contributing through providing trainers. The third element that is part of this is technical handholding to selected urban local bodies, because the moment somebody is trained and then they go back and they start actual implementation, there are always issues of how this thing should be done or not done and how the planning should be. So that is one aspect that has been kept forward. These are just some photos of the launch of the manual and some for the training for all of you to see. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Vaishali. Great. Well, 41 institutes trained. That's impressive. If you already have any questions, feel free to write it in the chat directly to Vaishali. And now let's go to the next presentation, to Sarah Habersack on City Sanitation Plans. Can you take over as presenter, please?
Yes, hello everybody, and thanks for inviting me to present the experience from this very particular capacity development approach that we applied here in India, actually in the same project as my colleague Vaishali was already presenting. So thankfully she has already covered the main information on the project background, so I can jump quite quickly into the core of our activities. So perhaps I'll just start with one thought or with a little anecdote at the beginning. So basically the idea was to really capacitate cities in preparing their own plans on their own, and that was particularly interesting when you work in a context where nearly every project proposal, every publication, every summary sheet starts with the words urban local bodies in India don't have capacities, and they basically can't do anything on their own. So when we came with this idea and propositions, you can imagine that the reaction were not too enthusiastic, or they were not too encouraging that that's a good idea, please go ahead. So that's also why I choose this question for the title of the presentation. So is it actually possible to work with cities to guide them for preparing their own plans? And also I'm not talking about cities like Mumbai or Delhi, but I'm talking about medium-sized cities in India, which structurally already have, of course, less resources and capacities than the big cities. So I will jump right in. What was the objective? of our activity. What should come out at the end, and towards what did we have to develop a capacity development strategy? So the objective was that medium-sized cities prepare on their own a strategic and integrated plan for the entire urban sanitation sector, which covers water supply, wastewater management, septic management, solid waste management, stormwater, and access to toilets. Yeah, so really the entire sector. But we didn't stop at that, but we got a little crazy and said that we also want the cities to actually use this plan to select and implement projects or any other interventions, so awareness raising programs, capacity development programs, any other interventions for improving their sanitation situation. How far we have reached with this objective, I will also disclose to you in the course of the presentation, because I'm lucky enough to present it at a point of time where we have nearly completed the activity. So what were the conditions, in which we had to work, or in which we had to develop the strategy for achieving this objective? So basically, the City Sanitation Plan is a tool mandated by the national government. It was introduced as part of the National Urban Sanitation Policy 2008. So there was some kind of political backup at the national level for this document. Secondly, CSPs have been prepared in India since then by around 200 cities, but actually what we noticed is that they were not prepared in many cases by the cities themselves, but by consultants hired by the state government or other expert institutions. At the ownership and the involvement of city administrations were rather limited. Additionally, the CSP does not lead to direct funding. So if I complete the CSP, it's not that I get all the funding for the projects I propose in the CSP. This is also important to know, because that will hint at what could be the motivation level of city administrations and what would be required from a program. From GIZ angle, we had tested this tool in an earlier project in 6 selected cities, so there was quite an experience on the ground realities of working with such a tool. And when we started this project phase, the ministry had requested GIZ that please upscale it. 6 cities is such a small, tiny number in the context of India, so please upscale it to other cities. Yeah, and that brought us the wonderful aim in our project proposal of having 40 cities preparing and implementing CSPs. Yeah. This was in 2013. Something else happened which was very positive when Vaishali said for the solid waste sector, for the CSP, it was tricky because the government of India introduced new programs, and suddenly the CSP was put at a very back burner and was not mandatory anymore. So now you might ask, why did GIZ still move forward with this piece? Why did we still structure the project like that, and how did we manage it? So first of all, we were convinced that there is still a backing of the City Sanitation Plan through the policy. And it was one of the few tools which really covered the entire sector. And although programmatically by the national government they split it, we said even more there is the necessity at the urban level to give the cities tools to bring it into convergence, to bring the sector together. It was also beyond technology, so CSP does not look only at technical solutions, also at the big questions of what kind of capacities are required and what kind of financial requirements are there. And the CSP also through the policy requires a multi-stakeholder task force, so it makes sanitation a joint objective. And last but not least, we said, okay, there is no direct funding line attached to the CSP, but the CSP, we hoped that we could work with cities on helping them in using actually an integrated tool, and only then decide what kind of funding they would like to apply for. In many cases, it's the way around, that first there are funding opportunities and then you prepare projects, no matter if that's really adequate for your context. So our objective was that we supported 4 state governments in rolling out the training and handholding program for the elected representatives, city bureaucrats and technical staff for preparing the CSP in collaboration with national and regional training institutes. So here you see already part of our strategy, which was that it should be rooted through the state government and not directly to the cities, and that we wanted to collaborate with national and regional training institutes. We did that in Uttarakhand, Telangana, Andhra, and Kerala. So you see that 4 of our 5 partner states wanted to do this project with us, and we had cities ranging from 5 to 80,000 population in Uttarakhand, but then, for example, in Andhra Pradesh, we had cities up to 500,000. So overall, there was a number of 48 cities, since in Uttarakhand we had clustered them in urban clusters because the cities were quite small. So how did we now implement it? And I want to display the strategy according to 3 logics. Yeah. One was, it was an upscaling mode. So we didn't work with the cities directly, but we had to capacitate and work with the state to be able to reach out to the cities. So actually the state government nominated the participating cities, and together with us, they selected regional training institutes which could become partner in this program. The state also always invited to any training programs, to any of the activities in this approach. So the invitation never went out from GIZ. And all kind of requirements from the cities, what they need to do, was given by the state. And the state, ideally, in some of the cases, even then showed some interest in support the implementation of projects. When it came to the training rollout, was that GIZ, and in this case we selected one national training institute, developed the course based on earlier experiences. We also, together with trainers from the training institutes, from the national one, and also partly from the regional one, although that was much more tricky, conducted the trainings. We ensured the quality control of the training, of course, but also of the CSPs that were prepared, and we provided the hand-holding in between. And now it's nice to see that the training institutes have started upscaling, and this was actually always the task, or always the aim. The cities themselves participated in the training program. They formed the City Sanitation Task Force, and after each training, I will show that right away, they had to take some steps and complete certain tasks for preparation of the CSP. And then they got it approved by the local council, and they should use it for selecting possible projects. So when I said that it's a training and hand-holding process, so that it was not a one-time training, and it was never a training for the sake of training, but it was designed at really the objective of handling a CSP at the end. So we had overall 3 training programs, and after each training program, the cities had to complete certain tasks of the CSP, and this was in line with basically the preparation steps of the CSP, like the baseline data collection, preparation of status report, then the analysis and identification of key issues, and finally the action plan. In between, we did a hand-holding process which consisted more or less out of 4 items. One was really formal support, or formal also communication from the state, so that it had a certain mandatory quality. We provided them knowledge products such as templates, manuals, and background information, so where they really just had to fill out the main sections. There was a significant amount of personal and informal interaction, which we also increased over time because we learned that visits to the cities are still very much required, and it's not possible to do it without it. And there was a help desk at the state level, and we used WhatsApp groups. And then there were certain add-ons. So, for example, we realized that the elected representatives need to be targeted more specifically, and we cannot just include them in the training program. So therefore, we had more customized programs for elected representatives. What did we now finally achieve? So I told you that I will also disclose that. So I think it went quite well, It was also for us surprisingly good, and the cities actually showcased that they have capacities. You just need some patience and persistence to kind of uncover them. So basically, what was nice to see was that all our partner states have actually, despite the changes at the national government level, put the CSP as part of their sanitation programming and steering. All cities have formed the multi-stakeholder task forces and have actually worked with them, and all cities have successfully done the baseline data collection. So far, and that's I'm saying so far because Uttarakhand has just not completed the process yet time-wise, so they still have 2 months to go, but at least half of them, so I would say in the earlier 3 states, nearly 90% have completed the CSP, and we're expecting to reach up to 40, which is not a bad number out of 48. And we could see that even 3 very concrete investment projects have come out, and 15 projects that were developed partly parallel, of course, were aligned with the CSP objectives and strategies. Of course, there you can already see that that is one of the most tricky parts of this project. 2 training institutes, 1 national and 1 regional from Kerala, have upscaled this training program and included it in their own training curriculum of the institution. And what was very nice to see is that after 2 years of the introduction of the new programs, our Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs has actually reintroduced the CSP as mandatory tool for access to funding. So there was a certain I don't know if I can attach this move or this change directly to our efforts, but I think we did quite a lot of support also for the ministry, and especially the states through this very positive experience were good promoters for this approach. Very quickly, as an end, some food for thought for the discussion was that our learning was really that the biggest challenge for the cities was not the data collection, which is always a tricky thing, but that actually worked quite well. But the biggest challenge was that they were not really able to formulate action plans or develop strategies out of the data that they had. So we needed really additional support and extra rounds for taking decisions on what do they actually want to do. Partly this is also linked to the fact that I think urban local bodies are not so often asked what they want to do. Secondly, the training methods were highly appreciated, but of course, as you can imagine, the learning transfers were always the most tricky one, while the hand-holding got actually intensified over the period of time, and partly it's also connected to the limitation of the system. And last but not least, I know we always want to go at the organizational level, and we need to make our training programs sustainable, and I'm all for it, You have to look at the individual and organizational level, but you should also not underestimate the uniqueness of a lot of personal interaction, and really also focus on individual change agents, because they can have quite a lot of power to influence the system after all. So that's just some food for thought for our discussion, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sarah. This was a great input, and as we can see, there are some crucial points on data collection and also on actually limitations of the system boundaries that we might encounter in a lot of these big countries, considering that you worked in 40 cities and all over India. That is quite a huge area. So our next presentations will be on the case of China now, from Dr. Marie Peters. So can you please take over as presenter?
Yeah, sure. So now I should be able. Yeah, hello everyone. I'm very happy also to get the chance to present some aspects of our Sino-German urbanization partnership here. We have a completely different situation here compared to what Sarah has just introduced. We are more or less like at the beginning of our project, so we are in the establishing phase of different activities, and so I can't present so many results or also lessons learned, but the major goal or objective of this presentation is actually to introduce this tool of the capacity partnership, which we thought is something a little bit special in the topic of capacity development. So I would like to introduce this to you in the Chinese-German cooperation. So maybe some background about our partnership. It was initiated by Chancellor Merkel and Premier Li Keqiang in 2013, so that's already a long time ago. There was the implementation basically started in 2015 when Minister Barbara Hendricks and Minister Chen Zhengao signed the joint declaration of intent. So then after that, the GIZ started in 2016 to implement the partnership, but we are cooperating with a lot of other institutions that are working in the Sino-German in both countries. Like, so we are not the only one who are doing or who are the partnership. It's many different institutions, but the main actors is BMUB and the Chinese Urban and Rural Ministry and GIZ. And on the Chinese side, we have several implementation partners, for example, the China Society for Urban Studies, the China Academy of Urban Planning and Development, and the Science, Technology and Industrialization Development Center. They are all institutions that are closely or associated with the Chinese Urban Ministry. Yeah, we will be working in the partnership as GIZ until July 2020. So this is just some background about our project. Then this is like our really basic project objective, which is really abstract, but also presents the variety of what we are trying to do. So the project contributes to the implementation of climate-friendly, integrated and sustainable urbanization in both countries. So this is really wide. This is also, this kind of represents our challenge here, because we can basically work on every topic relating to urbanization, which is of interest to the ministries in both countries, or especially also we address the cities, and they can address us with their concerns, with their challenges, and we try to provide some input on these. And one of our outputs, which especially relates to the topic of capacity development, is that we want to strengthen the institutional and interpersonal capacities through that are required to plan and implement this sustainable, climate-friendly urbanization. So also really abstract, but still, this is what we have to deal with. This is just to give you another overview. To see that we have not only the output of the capacity partnership, but majorly what we do is the political dialogue, which involves the ministries and the associated institutions, and especially the cities and their mayors. And then we have this outreach component. So yeah, and it all targets like the knowledge exchange between the two countries and capacity development. Okay, so this tool of the capacity partnership, here you can see some basic facts about it. It's actually something really simple. We just try to kind of formalize and institutionalize some long-term partnerships between GIZ and different institutions in China. So I will come back to these to some examples later. What these kind of what kind of institutions these are, but actually the variety of potential partners there's a variety of potential partners given. So it could be scientific, technical institutions, research institutions, city networks, and many more, and also the topics. So the idea is to create this partnership, to formalize it with some declaration of intent, so that we work together for the next 4 years, and then that we can react with working on different topics depending on the requests of the institutions. So, for example, if one institution has some need to work on energy efficient buildings in this year, but there might be another focus in the next year, then we can adapt the focus and always react to the topics they would like to get input on. But we don't have to start from scratch, but have this agreement already that we are working together. So that would make it easier to change from one topic to another. Yeah, and also the formats of cooperation are quite open. What we are currently developing is cooperation in training. So we could, or we are planning to support in training demand analysis, to bring in, so the idea is to bring in German expertise and methods into these trainings. We are planning to design training curricula together, so to support either in the topic selection of trainings and also the methods. One of the fields is also policy and technical advice. I will give one example later on. It would also be possible, but we haven't started with anything like that yet, to have some staff exchange. So that, for example, somebody from an institution in China goes to Germany to a similar institution for some time and gets some knowledge, and we could support this kind of format, or some research projects that also vary in topics over the time. So this is the basic idea of the capacity partnership. And now I would like to go into 3 examples where we are currently establishing such a partnership, which is the first one is the Beijing Uni Construction Company called BUCC. It's the leading company in the building sector in China, and they already have an existing training center. So the plan is to not develop something completely new, but to support something that's already existing. This is also one of the requirements actually of the capacity partnership. So the idea is to bring in knowledge, for example, by inviting experts from Germany, also inviting German experts that are in China already to existing trainings of BUCC. We want to design training curricula or improve training materials. Also training for trainers is a topic raised in this cooperation, and the establishment of contacts to German institutions. So to really facilitate the knowledge exchange between BUCC and similar institutions in Germany. Also, it is possible that we support them with the format of study tours, so that we help them to go to Germany themselves and gain further knowledge in the field of building and construction. So here the format is training, and the topics, you might also get an idea about the variety of the topics of our urbanization partnership. Here it is, of course, due to the nature of the company, it is mostly related to building. So, for example, low energy building, prefabricated building, certification of buildings, so to create standards for building, but also topics like adaptation of districts to climate risk. Smart districts is a topic which is highly discussed here. in China. I think they have similar problems as we in Germany, that it's very difficult to tell what is a smart district. So to get some kind of standards and understand the concept a little bit better, to better apply it to districts in Chinese cities. Also, affordable housing was raised as a topic, and construction monitoring for planning to design, operation, and maintenance. And the target group of these trainings is not only the employees of the company, of BUCC, but they also invite other employees of other construction companies in China. So with engineers, constructors, planners, or also designers. So the whole variety in the building sector. Oh, I have another 2 minutes left. So I quickly introduce the other two cases to you. We have, as a second case, the Research Institute of Standards and Norms. They want to cooperate with us. They are a leading institution in the development of standards and norms in China. And the idea here is to help them to compile and review regulations and standards also in the building sector. So this is majorly what they want some policy advice on standards and institutional structures from Germany. So topics for this year is the building urban construction sector, but it's also possible that, or they are also interested in urban planning standards, in water supply and drainage standards, heating, wastewater, or urban transport. Here, for this case, it is majorly for employees and policymakers of institutions. So they want to get support in drafting better standards and regulations. And the last example I'd like to introduce to you .
It seems, Maria, we can't hear you at the moment. Marie, Chenzi, are you still here? Seems they may reconnect. Yeah, they seem offline at the moment. But if you want, we can also start with some of the questions, because I've seen some colleagues already raised some points here on, for example, the mass online courses. Chenzi, are you back now? Yes, perfect. Okay.
Again?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Oh, yeah, unfortunately, we somehow got thrown out. I'm not sure where. Okay, you still see the not the last slide.
The second
so I
partner
guess
institution, Research Institute of Standards and Norms.
Yeah. Okay. So, oh, sorry. You didn't hear me talking about the third example, right?
Not at all. Also, the second was probably missing.
Oh, the second was also missing. Okay, then I jump back to the second one. So in the second one, we cooperate with the Research Institute of Standards and Norms, and this is a little bit different format than the one before, because we only advise the policymakers of this institute directly, so it's not involving any outsiders of the institute, and it's a leading institute in the development of standards and norms in China, and they are currently compiling and reviewing, or currently, like on the topic we want to cooperate, the regulations and standards in the building sector. So this is the topic for this year, the focus of this year. And for the next years, they are also interested in standards and regulations from advice from Germany on urban planning, on water supply and drainage, on heating systems, on waste treatment and urban transport. But it tells me I am presenter. So I'll stop presenting and start it again. Can you see the next slide now?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. And I hope that you got my elaborations on the Standards and Norms Institute. This is my last case study, last example, where we are initiating a cooperation at the moment, which is a little bit different format, because we are not only supporting trainings, but also seminars and study tours for governors and mayors in China, together with the National Academy for Mayors of China. Yeah, they are a training institution that is affiliated with the Chinese ministry, giving training to mayors and governors. So they already have an established structure here as well, and we are just coming in and supporting on trainings on very general topics, again, like urban development strategies, urban planning, construction, urban management, and so on. And also the topics can vary. Yeah, so this is basically the three case studies, and yeah, I have to mention this is all work in progress, so we are really on a really early stage, and that's also why I'm very happy to listen to my colleagues here today, because we definitely can need some advice on how to best make these trainings and to really develop some capacities here. Okay, thank you very much. So I'll hand over to Chenzi immediately, or Eva, you're taking over first?
Yes, feel free to hand over directly to Chenzi, who will talk about the Kaili City Transport Hub project. You're still as a presenter.
Hello everyone, very happy to share some of the most recent experience we've got from the Kaili's Transport Hub project. Again, my presentation is very different from all of the previous ones, as CDIA is very focused on project and on the on-ground changes and operational levels. First, I'll give a brief introduction of CDIA. CDIA is short for Cities Development Initiative in Asia. It's an international partnership initiative started in 2007 by the Asian Development Bank, ADB, and the government of Germany, with additional funding from government of Austria, Sweden, and Switzerland, and the Shanghai Municipal government. This year is our 10-year anniversary for CDIA. And CDIA's mandate is to provide assistance to medium-sized Asian cities to bridge the gap between their development plans and the implementation of their infrastructure investment. CDIA supports the identification and development of urban investment projects and link this project to potential financiers. And this chart shows the full cycle of CDIA's work. So from the left, that's where we get our fundings from our upstream finance funders. And in the center, that's our core activity, which usually lasts about 6 to 10 months. In the center, you can see that the pre-feasibility studies, that's the main focus of our work. And also we provide a tool called infrastructure investment prioritization tool, and also then linking projects to finance. And of course, for each infrastructure development project, it's a very long period in time and requires very big funding. So after our PFS, there are also a lot of downstream process, such as the feasibility study, the financing agreements, and the project implementation and construction, and the operational maintenance. So CDIA has been in China for 10 years as well, and we have completed about 18 projects all over China. We focus on cities with a population lower than 5 million. In China, that is considered medium size. I know it's a very big size for cities in other countries. Okay, about this very specific project in Kaili. By the way, we currently have about 4 or 5 projects going on in China at the same time in different phases. And this project in Kaili started in June. The project itself, it's a little bit complicated. First of all, the city of Kaili, it's a county-level city located in the southwest of China in the Guizhou province, one of the poorest provinces in China. And the urban population of the city is around 500,000. One very important component for the project is that the city of Kaili became very popular in recent years because of the minority cultural heritage in the surrounding villages, the Miao and Dou minority settlement there. They attract a lot of tourists from all over China. And because of these issues, and also with the urbanization process, there are more and more people coming to Kaili. And the original city transport infrastructure could not handle this growing population. One problem is that the minority villages, they are located around the city. And the original bus terminal is in the other side of the city. So tourists drive through the city to the touristic attractions. And that adds a lot of traffic volume for the city. And in 2016, the city tried to solve this issue. In hot seasons for travel, like in the summer, there could be over 50 kilometers of traffic jams in the city. So in 2016, they started this project to develop a transport hub in the east side of the city. This hub is intended to provide better service for both local population and incoming tourists, and integrate the city bus terminal with the intercity long distance bus terminal, as well as tourism center and commercial center. And very efficiently, in 2016, the city completed a project feasibility study. And then a construction engineer design was also completed. However, in the same year, the city made another decision, which is to abandon the original plan and use a new model to operate this project. It's required by the national government to use more PPP, the public-private partnerships, to leverage social capitals. So the city decided to use PPP methodology model for this project. However, the FS was already done, and the construction engineer design was also done, which creates a huge problem for the city. And this is where CDIA jumped in to support the city. To be more specific, CDIA provides three major components. The first is to review and refine and validate the existing feasibility study. Second is to develop a PPP framework based on the relevant China national PPP guidelines and requirements to enable the project to be actually operated under the PPP model. And the third component is to provide capacity building for the city to be able to run and operate a desired transport hub. As my colleague Thomas already gave a webinar before about our integrated capacity development approach. For this project, we follow this methodology, but some changes were made for some more project-specific changes were made. The first step, we made need analysis by our technical assistant team to see what are the capacity gaps for the project. And based on this analysis, we identify the long and short-term goals and what are the low-hanging fruits for the project. And for this project, we aimed really high in the beginning to help the city to be able to operate the transport hub to the international standard. But when we did our survey, we found out that many of the city officials and the technical officials, they don't even have very basic understanding of what is PPP and how to run the transport hubs. So we lowered our expectation and we decided to start from the basics. So our first training was really a knowledge sharing training to inform all the stakeholders about what is the PPP, what would the procedures be different from the traditional way of operating a project. And after we had a plan, we communicate with the city back and forth to see if they are okay and understand what we are trying to train them about. And then after that, we analyze if the existing resources could cover the capacity development need, because specific about CDIA, we hire through an international bidding process, we hire a technical firm to provide the PFS for the city. So we already have a group of experts there, but in some situations, for example, this one, we need extra sources to provide the capacity building. And after that, we contracted a national consultant and we provided on-site support during the CapDev. And after that, we had an evaluation process. The project itself is quite complicated as we are very involved in the project implementation itself. I'm trying to give an outline here. Well, the training was evaluated to be very practical and useful, and it was also evaluated as one of the most successful training by our ADB China project manager. There are some lessons learned from this project. First of all, for us, it's very important to do the need assessment. It is from the need assessment that we see that the city really have no idea about PPP. If not, we would the model we designed wouldn't be so practical and useful to them. And the second one is to find the right trainer. One of the as a goal for capacity training, we try to change the behavior of the trainees, right? And for this project, because of the insufficient understanding of PPP, there were a lot of obstacles at the city level from different bureaus and other stakeholders because they don't understand what is PPP. So they were resisting to incorporate commercial planning involved in the project. That was too risky and too new for them. So in order to change their way of thinking, we contracted a high-level official from the national level government, and she speaking is better than other trainers who might also be very experienced in the field because she represents that she knows the she's the authority, and she knows exactly what's the latest national policy entails. So she played a very key role to change the city's old way of thinking towards the PPP model. And the third lessons learned point is that the informal training and interaction part, they very often bring very positive surprises. I remember in this case, we had a technical problem with the setting first, and because of that, we started to chat with one of the officials there, who was turned out to be the person who was objecting our approach. And because we started that conversation with him, we cleared out the biggest obstacles for the project. And next, to always be flexible and make adjustment. There were several changes during our training at the city. For example, just the mayor all of a sudden don't have time to join our training, and we made adjustment very quickly to make it into a closed door round table since all the other main stakeholders were there. Yeah, and the last point, languages could be a barrier. I observed that, for our training this time, most of the trainers speak Chinese, but one of our trainers speaks English, even though we had a translator. It brings a different atmosphere to the room. And since we were in a quite laid-back region in China, even the government officials, they became very shy because the presenter, the trainer, was a foreigner, and that session wasn't so. The atmosphere was different, and I feel like they could have been better for the trainees' benefit. Okay, I'll stop here, and for my colleagues in China, if oops. Am I still here? Okay. Yeah, just a final comment for the projects in China. If you work with cities and on the field of climate resilient related infrastructure project, maybe we could collaborate and let us know if there are future collaboration opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chenzi, and China and India for this excellent overview of your work. So some projects already finished, other ones are starting, and I think there are quite different approaches. Like either you work with the partner organizations or rather on a city level. So now the stage is open for questions. And I've seen already the first comment that was raised was from Kai Hoffmann on massive open online courses. And as we are talking about capacity development, this question goes to India, Vaishali. So also, you may want to add some points on the fantastic solid waste management training that was developed and that is also available for others. And have you had any experience with MOOC courses so far, India?
Okay, thanks, Eva. So, as far as the MOOC courses are concerned, the e-module that I presented is a variation of the similar courses. This is a platform that is run by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs themselves. And we did put certain courses there. Like I mentioned, there were 4 courses in bilingual. So they're in English and Hindi, one of the local languages. And one we are also doing on the manual, which will be, we prepared, it's just to be uploaded. But all said and done regarding these, online courses, there are certain issues of ultimately reaching, if we're looking at 4,000 odd cities, And if you look at least 4 participants from each of the cities, you're already at a 60,000 number. Everybody having email accessibility, everybody actually participating, it's like a huge thing. I agree, online would be the simplest, but there are issues the moment you step down from the main metros and maybe second tier cities. There are issues of connectivity. So the e-modules that we've prepared are actually just video. They have videos plus questions and various formats it is. They're very short, so 15 minutes. So you are not actually 1.5 hours is probably too much to do. So I would say the reach, in this aspect, the reach was the important part. The other, of course, is the manual. The manual as such is like, the real writing from the ministry. So the ministry stand. So if a landfill needs to be done, one is the rule, but one is exactly how it should be done. So there's a whole detailed writing, and then nobody can really dispute that X was said or Y was said, because it's written in black and white. So that was the idea of having that manual, and it's the technical handbook with the ministry. It's like the ministry's Bible, let's say.
And perhaps just to add on, also from my side, here is Sarah, concerning the printed material. I mean, we had a lot of discussions about that, yeah. And the added value of a manual is, if you give it to the training participants, it could help in the transfer into the home organization, because they have something that they can show. There are certain pictures in it that they can share, and what we normally did was we would add on also the presentations that were shown in the training to the manual. So there is something which can literally be handed over when they're going back to their superior or to the colleagues. So there is still this element of actual literal handover, which we found is an added value, although, I mean, ideally it should go hand in hand together. So e-learning plus printed material.
But we still haven't found, one to replace the other. So we still say that,
in combination.
Combination, and the print word is still taken as the final, the moment you look at the hardcore engineers, let's say.
Okay, and talking about China also presented about these cooperation of these urbanization partnerships. How is it in India, for example? Sarah, you were talking about the city sanitation plans that were prepared and implemented by 40 cities. So was there also a learning among these cities, or have they all prepared their city plan based on the method and the concept you presented?
Well, basically, all the cities selected in one state underwent this process together. So we had this events together with them. So there was a lot of course, peer learning among them, and we also had always sessions in there where the cities could present on their experience or give some inputs from their learnings. Additionally, for example, that Uttarakhand state started a little later, we had inputs from cities from Kerala, for example, in Uttarakhand on their process development and on their CSP preparation, because I completely agree with what Chenzi said, that sometimes it's very good to have also key personnel from the partner organizations or from the government who gives actually input in these trainings, and not only trainers, because then it becomes more, let's say, mandatory or relevant when you work especially with city administration. So if the head of the urban development department of the state comes and says something, gives some input, or some peers give some input, that has a much stronger impact.
Thank you. Looking now at the China experience, there are two different approaches. One, CDIA is working more on the city level on capacity development, and the Sino-German partnership project works more on a, I would say, political institutional level. So do you see any linkages among both of your projects? Because one is already running and might have more experience on the city level, and the other one is now still in an initial phase. Do you think there are some synergies among your programs?
This is Marie from the Sino-German Urbanization Partnership. I definitely see a lot of synergies, and we are already working closely together. I mean, we're not only sitting in offices next to each other, but we are working on the institutional level. Yeah, I would agree here. But the end beneficial is actually the cities themselves, and we also go to the city level by giving trainings through the associations that train mayors. So I was really carefully listening to Chenzi's presentation, because I already got quite some insights into what we have to think about, and so I definitely see that this is really valuable to work together. I mean, this is really concrete training experience which you gain here in CDIA, and this is definitely, it can be also widespread, for example, by bringing the knowledge into the trainings we do with the Mayors Association, for example. So I think really this is good to work together here.
Yeah, I think the same as well. From my side, I attended the meeting for the SUP project. And it is also important for CDIA. We work mostly with the city level very concretely, but we also want to upgrade our experience. We want to have a national partner in China, and we were talking together through their network and their government partners to see if we can find a partner for us as well. We're also thinking about collaborating in workshops together, because CDIA can provide our experience and cases for the project, which might be a very good example for some of other projects in pilot initiatives started from the high ministry level.
Yeah, thank you. And within this framework, do you also support a sort of follow-up structure after city officials or your partners attend the trainings? This still goes to China?
If we establish some follow-up mechanisms, I don't think I can say much about that.
A kind of knowledge exchange between participants. That was a question from Teresa.
I see. Yeah. For the CDIA, we actually have a routine for this training evaluation. We have an evaluation form we send to all of our trainees, and we do a analysis based on their score and comments. And after 3 months, we have another process that will send them an email. This survey is much simpler with only 4 questions, basically asking if you could, if you find it practical to adapt, to apply our training methodology knowledge to your daily work.
Yeah, I think this is really excellent. I mean, following up on these activities, because often nothing happens afterwards. And I know especially in these 2 programs in China, it's also of benefit, because CDIA is still on a city level, but hasn't really reached to go on the really to get linked or aligned to the national level. And I think the approach of the German Chinese partnership program might be of real benefit to it. Also, Teresa has a very good question that we're dealing often. So, how do you deal with the constant staff changes in your partner organizations? I would say this is a good question also for India. So when you train the first group, they already have new colleagues, or some, or maybe the people are changing. So there might be a high turnover of staff people. Sarah, Vaishali?
Yes, I mean, of course, this is one of the major challenges that we are dealing with, especially in some cases. For example, in the case of Kerala, not only high-level bureaucrats or decision makers are changed, but also technical staff is changed regularly. So, I mean, there are certain things that you can do. Basically, it means to try to always involve. So we try to always involve at least 3 people per city, yeah, so that there is a certain knowledge exchange. So if there is only one person that is changing, then it will be continued. Secondly, that's why it was so important to house it with the state, strongly with the state, because the communication from a state never goes to a person, it goes to a designation. So also the memory of the institution needs to be there. So when we speak literally the file, yeah, if the file goes to a designation and not to a person, so to the municipal commissioner and not to Mr. Rajesh, then it's easier for the next person to pick it up. In the training design, of course, you need to include a session where you pick up everybody who has joined newly. Yeah. So basically, this is something where it's not ideal. Yeah. It's very, very tricky. Yeah. And it will just mean that you also need to schedule more time and more resources. Yeah. You cannot always expect that actually not only if there is a change in staff, but also the cities do not necessarily always send the same people. That is also something we always had to communicate very clearly with the state, that they have to send the same people. Yeah, that means, like, practically speaking, that meant that 1 week before the training, our colleagues working at the state and city level would call each and every of the cities and really follow up and have the personal discussion and explain and explain and explain. Yeah, so this means a lot more resources to be involved, but there is somehow not really an easy way out, because that is what I meant with you sometimes then encounter the limits of the system with which you're working. You can mitigate some of the issues, but sometimes you just have to accept it. Vaishali, anything to add from your side?
And for municipal waste, once a person is trained, they are trained. So if the capacity shifts from one ULB to the other, you are in any case going to cover 4,000.
Yeah, you always meet twice in life. Yeah, so that's why the investment in one person can also be worthwhile, perhaps not for the GIZ project itself, but for the overall sector, definitely.
Maybe the person sits in the ministry afterwards, so it's also a benefit. Yeah. Jürgen Baumann needs to leave, but he had the question, I think it was also to you, India, talking about the virtual groups. So do you have any strategies to implement virtual groups between participants for future peer consultation among them?
So the ministry is basically trying to spearhead in any case under their Clean India mission. So they have this platform and they have this also as a peer learning exchange. So, but beyond a certain point, since our project finishes, we've tried to build a system in which the ministry is leading this with training institutes, and there is a peer-to-peer exchange not only within the training institutes of how they're taking things forward, but also within the urban local bodies, but at the state level. But let us say, it's still work in progress.
And perhaps just one observation from my side. I mean, we also had WhatsApp groups in one of the states. Yeah, I mean, from what I have observed, a lot of communication, of course, in India between government officials also goes via WhatsApp. But it's seldomly used really for peer exchange. It's used for either displaying of best practices, which is also good, yeah, of sharing videos or photographs, which is also very necessary. When it really comes to the learning from each other, which also means that you have to be a little bit honest about the challenges you face, yeah, or the difficulties, because that is an important part of learning. Then to my experience, it doesn't work on this virtual platforms. There, the personal interaction in a safe environment is very important, because by the sheer fact of mentioning like was something difficult or was something, I mean, it also means to display as a city official or as a technical person that you're encountering certain barriers, and that's for nobody very easy and very comfortable. So you really have to create safe and sometimes also a little bit smaller environments where the people can actually then come out with it a little bit more clearly. And that was something we had. Normally one trainer was also always in charge for a smaller group of cities where more bilateral talks would happen, where you would follow up more personally. So where over coffee or over sitting together, you could then talk more informally about what had actually happened and why it was actually difficult to come up with this or that point. And I think virtually, at least here, but even in the European context, I think it's much more difficult. Yeah.
Definitely. I think even in Asia it might be easier. So this as a last question also to China. I know you have I guess it's not new, but for us it's new. The WeChat work. Is it a kind of a platform, or how do you use it to engage with your partners?
Yeah, I was just about to comment on that, because Sarah already explained the situation with WhatsApp in India. So it's working very similar to what we do on WhatsApp, but it has some more functions. So you could, for example, establish what we do in our project. Well, basically, nearly every project here has a channel where you share information. And we are just this month we are organizing a mayor's tour. So mayors from China going to Germany, and we have also established a WeChat group here. And we haven't really seen how it turns out because it's just going to start next week. But what I would assume, it's really active in China using these groups. It's really one of the best channels to share information and also to keep the people informed and like to keep them active. But I guess you would have to after some time, I assume they would be dying. Like if you don't feed in information or encourage them to exchange or like feature events or something, they would probably die after some time. But yeah, it's definitely a valuable channel also.
Okay, thank you very much. I see we're also at the end of the time. If there is still any question from the participants, so feel free to approach our colleagues directly. And if you are not included in the email list, please insert your email here in the chat, and Lucy will include you also forward the presentations. Thank you very much for joining. Excellent to have these insights to China and India. So we will also share the recording and the presentation at the end, latest 2 weeks afterwards. And looking forward to a next webinar. So we're planning our next webinar beginning of next year. And if you have any topic that you would like to present or you would like to get more inputs, please feel free to raise the point to us. Thank you so much to all the presenters. Thank you, Vaishali, Sarah, Marie, and also Chenzi. And in particular in the background, Lucy and Nalina for recording.